Hello, in this video we look at developmental sequences. When we think about teaching grammar, we often imagine that if we explain a rule clearly, give students a number of exercises and then correct them, the student will learn it. But real language learning doesn't work that way, at least not entirely. Grammar isn't just learned, it's also acquired. And one of the most important concepts in second language acquisition research is that learners tend to acquire certain grammar features in predictable stages, no matter how they're taught. And these stages are known as developmental sequences. A developmental sequence is a natural order in which learners, both children and adults, tend to acquire certain grammatical structures in a second language. These sequences are observed across many different contexts, language backgrounds, and instructional settings. They suggest that learners can't just learn everything at once, even if it's presented to them. Instead, their internal language system develops in stages. This doesn't mean that all learners follow the exact same path or that progress is always linear, but the general patterns are surprisingly consistent. So let's take the example of the acquisition of English negation. Research shows that learners often go through the following stages. So first, there's external negation. No speak English, like putting no before the verb or the whole sentence. Then there's internal negation with formula. I no like it. Then they'll use don't without tense agreement. I don't like, or he don't like. And then there might be tense and subject verb agreement merging later. So he doesn't like it. No matter how early you teach doesn't, or how many gap fills you give, many learners, or most learners, will not produce it accurately until they're developmentally ready. Sorry. Take another example, question formation. The development of questions in English also tends to follow a sequence. So single words or rising intonation begins the sequencing. You want? Then uninverted WH questions. What's he's doing or what he's doing? Then there's inversion with the auxiliaries. What is he doing? And then tag questions and embedded questions start to emerge. You know what he's doing, don't you? Again, accuracy with complex questions only emerges after simpler forms become stable. So why does this matter for teaching? Well, it tells us that accuracy doesn't always mean acquisition. A student might get everything right in a controlled exercise, but still revert to earlier forms in free conversation. Why? Well, because practice can temporarily boost performance, but true acquisition follows its own internal clock. That's why we talk about interlanguage, the learner's evolving internal grammar system, which combines rules from their first language, the target language, and their own creative hypotheses. Developmental sequences are part of that process. So how should teachers respond? Well, we should be patient with errors. Some are developmental and will self-correct over time. We shouldn't assume that teaching equals learning. Exposure, repetition, and communicative use are essential. We should provide input slightly above their current stage. This is what Krashen called comprehensible input, or I+1. And we should recycle structures. Just because you taught the past tense in week 2 doesn't mean it's done in week 10. And we should focus on form, but not obsessively. Students need meaningful communication more than rule memorization. So what does the research say? Well, the most well-known studies on developmental sequences come from researchers like Dulé and Burt, Bailey, Madden and Krashen and Pieneman, who showed that learners of English, German and other languages passed through comparable stages in the acquisition of negation, questions, word order and morphology. In fact, Pieneman's processability theory argues that learners can only acquire structures they are psycholinguistically ready to process. In other words, if the brain can't yet handle a certain rule, no amount of teaching will make it stick. So what's the takeaway? Well, as teachers, we need to shift from seeing grammar as a syllabus of topics and start seeing it as a path of development. Our job is not just to deliver rules, but to support the journey, to give learners time, space, input and practice as they build their own internal grammar systems. Step by step, stage by stage. If we accept that errors are natural, that progress isn't linear and that development follows a sequence, we'll be more effective and more compassionate teachers. Thank you for listening.